Thank you for tuning in to Tanaka TV, the best and future biggest fight channel on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that like, that comment, that subscribe button. We're trying to get this channel to over 2,000 subs by the end of the year. We cannot do that. This channel cannot do that without your support. So thank you for those who support this channel. And thank you for those who will support this channel in the future. I truly appreciate it. Now, let's get into Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker as the co-main event to UFC 308. I think that this is a phenomenal co-main event, and I think that it's quite interesting depending on your perspective on this fight, because you're looking at a man like Robert Whittaker who has a tremendous amount of experience and success in the UFC. If we're looking at what Robert Whittaker has accomplished, we're talking about a former UFC champion here, people. We're talking about a guy who's beaten people like Marvin Vettori, Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, Darren Till, Yoel Romero twice, Souza, Derek Brunson, Uriah Hall. He's extremely battle-tested. And I think that he has proven to be a very overall complete mixed martial artist. I think that that's something that you cannot take away from Robert Whittaker. Now, in his last couple of fights, I must admit, although he has beaten the last two people that he has fought, the last two that he has fought and beaten were Paulo Costa and Ikram. Two very solid fighters, but what I'm trying to get at is that Robert Whittaker, in my opinion, has had a little bit of dip in his performances. I wouldn't by any means say that he is at his peak as far as his performances overall. And I think that he's going to be, or need to be, at his peak, at his best form, going up against a guy like Khamzat Chimaev. In my mind, if he was able to make weight, people, if he was able to settle in on his weight and be able to be a consistent fighter, I think that has been his biggest enemy. That he has not been able to stay consistent. We all know that he has not been able to make weight for various amounts of competitions, and that has led him to not be able to fight or have competitions count because he has not been able to make weight. Granted, he's had some extremely good fights, people. Some extremely good wins against some really tough and competitive fighters. He's beaten Usman, Kevin Holland, Gilbert Burns, which I'm going to say this, I think that is Khamzat's best performance was against Gilbert Burns. It was a very competitive fight, and I think that a lot of people, I think it went 50-50. Some people could have said that Khamzat lost that fight against Gilbert Burns. But the point to that fight is that Khamzat showed a lot of heart. He showed a lot of put back into that fight. And that if he was not there to fight, if he was not there to put on a war, put on a show, that he would have probably for sure lost that fight. Especially going up against a guy like Gilbert Burns. And we could say a very similar story to Kamaru Usman. We're talking about guys that one was a champion, a long-reigning champ. Some people might say is the greatest welterweight of all time. And Gilbert Burns being one of the guys that I have chosen in the past to be a future champ. He just has not had the dice roll in his favor. He could have potentially been a future champ in his own right. So those are two very solid wins for Khamzat. So what does Robert Whittaker have in his favor? I think that he's a more battle-tested guy. He's gone up against more who's fighters, and he has been more consistent and has had more longevity in that consistency. Now, you could say Khamzat in his own right has been consistent, but has it been up against guys who are in the same bracket, going up and comparing it to Robert Whittaker's record? I don't think so. Let's see. Khamzat has had, now all of these are wins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight fights. All wins. So I'm not taking that away from Khamzat. But you have to look at the quality of fighters that Khamzat has fought overall. Have you heard of John Phillips? Have you heard of Reese McKee? Have you heard of Gerald Mearshart? I'm terrible with names. So for the first 3 fights, to be fair, it's his first 3 fights, we don't know who they are. After that, he fought Lee, Zhang Li, Gilbert Burns, of course, Kevin Holland, of course, Kamaru Usman, of course. But almost 50% of his fights, I don't know who they are. We have to take that into account. But what I'm taking also into account is how they have been looking as far as their most recent fights. And what they bring to the octagon, and what will be the advantage as far as what they are bringing. I think Khamzat is a complete mixed martial artist, and I think that he's become more complete over the course of the last maybe 2 years or so. I think that he was a very grappling specific guy, and his weakness, his Achilles heel, was for sure striking, but he has been improving on that, and I think it showed within his last 3 fights. His striking has gotten pretty decent. I don't think he's a slouch in that department. Now, I would give it to Robert Whittaker, even though I don't think Robert Whittaker is a top-tier striker. I think Robert Whittaker can be clunky as a striker. I think that he can be very pot-shotty, and that he leads in with his head sometimes too much, and that he can be very predictable with his striking, and his combination selection can be very juvenile in a way. It can be very predictable. I'm just going to be honest, people. It can be very predictable. And I think that may play a factor, but I think the biggest factor in this fight, the winning factor in this fight, will be the grappling, and I will give that edge to Khamzat. Khamzat is that guy in that division when it comes to grappling. I think in whatever division that Khamzat goes to, that he's capable of going to, Khamzat will be the deciding factor when it comes to grappling. And if Khamzat chooses to take Robert Whittaker down and dominate him there, I think that there's a good chance. Now, I think it's going to be hard for Khamzat to finish Robert Whittaker, but I think as far as points go, and as far as who will have the most time in control, I see Khamzat winning. Now, how do I see this fight going? Here's the big overlapping thing. I don't think that there's going to be a finish in this fight. I don't think you're going to see many fireworks in this fight unless they both choose to keep this fight on the feet, but I don't think it's going to go there. I think that Khamzat is going to attempt to ragdoll Robert Whittaker on the ground and try to control him there. And that's where I see this fight going. It's going to be a very up and down fight. A lot of clinch work, a lot of grappling, and I think that Khamzat's going to push that pace. And that's how he's going to win this fight. Robert Whittaker's way of winning this fight is, of course, through probably trying to knock out Khamzat, which is a possibility. But if we're talking about odds here, Khamzat by points. So comment down below, people, what you think about this breakdown. Do you think Robert Whittaker has a better chance of winning, or Khamzat? And how do you see this fight going? I would love to get your opinion. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.